Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. It is time for Monday Mentor. I'm Jen Whitmer, and I help teams and leaders solve conflict, cultivate communication, and create empowered teams. And every Monday, I come live and have a fantastic guest to share with you to be our leadership mentor. We spend about 20 minutes talking about a topic that really matters for you as a leader. And today, I'm so happy to have Aree Bly on. She is a LinkedIn friend who was incredibly helpful to me in my own TEDx journey. She is a fellow TEDx speaker, a success coach. She works a lot around the ideas of alignment, and especially for people who have, as she calls, analytical minds, which I always think is really intriguing. So thanks for being here today, Aree.
Thank you, Jen. It is my pleasure. So happy.
Yeah, so lovely to be with you. So tell us, I always love to start so we kind of set the table and share the story. How did you get where you are? You started as an actuary and now you help teams and leaders work through this alignment issue. How did that happen? Tell us how you got here.
It is not the most expected career path for sure. So like you mentioned, I started out as an actuary and I spent 25 years as an actuary. I got into that because I love math. I was good at math. It made sense to jump into math. So I really followed what I was good at, right? I followed my skill set and created over those 25 years a very exciting and fun and challenging career, doing what I liked to do and what I could do. At some point, though, probably a couple of years before I shifted, so I bounced around between consulting firms and corporate, so I got a good taste of everything, which really fed my desire to be learning all the time. But at some point, I did realize that it wasn't the math, it wasn't the technical stuff that I was really enjoying anymore. So, being the analytical mind that I am, I decided to use that to kind of step back and say, okay, what the heck is going on? Why is this not really feeding me anymore? And I realized that I was really enjoying and energized by working with the people, by helping my colleagues be better at what they needed to be doing, by helping teams work together. And luckily, I was in a position and in a company that really encouraged me to test those waters. So I was able to get certified as a coach and start working with our HR team a little more closely a couple of years before I even retired from being an actuary. So I could put on those two hats during my days and really feed what was energizing me, as well as maintaining the skills of being an actuary. So did that for a couple of years, and then I decided it was time to really just jump full force into the coaching and the speaking and helping people full time, because it really, that test period really cemented in me that is what I love to do and what I should be doing at this point. It's what I evolved into.
There are so many great nuggets in that story. We could talk about that for the next hour. So I would love, if you are in the comments, if you are here live, first of all, let us know you're here live. But I would love to know if there is something in your life where you're like, oh, I love this, and that made sense, but then it changed. Like, I think that happens for a lot of us. And some people, leave that particular industry entirely switch to something different, which is what you've done in many ways. And other people are like, oh no, that just means a shift within this organization, or going to a different organization that lets me do a little bit more of this. It doesn't necessarily mean you jump out as an entrepreneur. I think sometimes people are like, oh, this is what you have to do. But I love that, of like, this is what made sense. This is what I loved. And then this is what I loved. And that is key in, I think, what we're going to talk about for the rest of our time when we're talking about alignment. So I always like to start with defining some terms. So what do you see as alignment? What does that mean in this context of our conversation today?
Right. What it means to me, and it's potentially a term that I kind of created as far as the way that I use it. It's really aligning all of the different elements of yourself. Like I said, I got into the career because I followed my skills. I followed the doing, what I knew how to do, and not who I was, not the being part. So what I realized as I was kind of stepping back and analyzing what was going on, it was the fact that I wasn't aligned anymore with kind of my natural strengths of helping people and my core values of learning and supporting people and adventure as well. So I was ready for something new. And it really was recognizing all those other dimensions of myself and then figuring out how can I create a path forward that more closely aligns with who I am as well as what I can do.
I appreciate so much about what your definition is. I think we talk about it slightly differently, and I use a lot of language around wholeness. One of the things that it was a good first effort. I'm going to say it like that. People talk a lot about balance. Like all of a sudden, people started talking about work-life balance, and of course, it came back during the pandemic. But that was a pre-pandemic phase when people were really starting to burn out in ways that were new, because we were shifting how we worked. But balance, I don't think it quite gets at it. And your idea of alignment, like you're a whole person as a being, is so valuable because that's who we are. You don't, I always joke when I'm speaking, I'm like, it's not like you're at work, talking on the phone with your client and, at the same time, your home self is binge watching Netflix. That's not what's happening. Wherever you go, there you are. And the wholeness aspect of that is what keeps us connected in ways that give us the energy that you're talking about rather than letting us fall apart. So I know you've got a little bit of a story around that of like, how you discovered that maybe misalignment. Is that a good way to put it?
Yes. Yeah. And it really is, it's slowing down. So I don't know if anyone else feels like this sometimes, but it's starting out in your career, you kind of feel like, okay, this is what I have to do. And you kind of have one circle and maybe you have your life, circle over here. And you're trying to find that place where you can kind of intersect the two. It's almost like a Venn diagram. But then as things started growing and as I took on new roles and as, you get a family, you get a spouse, you get all these other things, all of a sudden I felt like it was a big spirograph. Do you remember those from? It was no longer like a very simple, okay, how do I mix this and this to create the best life? I was like, okay, there's 28 different.
You're trying to use the football one that never quite connects into the gears.
Yes. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, there's got to be a more simple way to make sense of this because I needed to make sense of it. I felt like I was just kind of scrambling to find the one intersection where I could kind of succeed here and not drop that ball. And I was like, okay, what made sense was really coming back to very simple. What are my values? Like what's important to me? And it's funny because my kids go, well, my youngest one now is the only one left there, but they go to a school where it used to be that their one rule was be kind. And they shifted that to be their value. So that school's values now are be kind, do good, and make the world a better place. And I was thinking about that the other day and I'm like, okay, but their values are not kindness, goodness, and growth, right? They aren't one word. They have an action in there. Be kind, do good. And I was like, okay, I know my values are helpfulness and growth and adventure. So if I can be adventurous and courageous, and if I can help others grow, and if I can, act on my values, that makes it fairly simple for that aspect of my life. And then I thought, okay, my strengths are, being harmony is one of my key strengths, like being able to find the common ground and how do I lean into that? And connection is another one of my big strengths. How do I lean into that? Because our strengths are kind of how we show up naturally. So again, it's making it easier. It's like, okay, what does my body and my brain and my heart want to do naturally? And if I can let that happen, I don't have to worry about all these other spirals and circles that I'm operating in. Let's focus on the values, the how of how I do this, which is my strengths. And then I can also lean into what do I want to do? Not just what am I trained up to do? What have I been doing for 25 years? Because that's apparently all I can do. What do I choose to do? What do I have the skills to do? And what do I want to build the skills to do? So once you can simplify that, then it makes it a little easier to kind of step back and, okay, now I know how to move a little bit better down this path with less distractions and less trying to fit into the one little circle that connects everything.
Well, it's so true. And I think what you said almost at the very beginning of that question was it takes some time to pause. Like sometimes we're spiraling, we're spirographing. I love that. Out of control because we haven't taken the time to notice, wait, what is the genesis of this spiral? We just think that that's how life happens. And so we start reacting back and forth rather than how can I respond to this? And when we ask the question, how can I respond to this? Then we have to ask the question of, well, how do I know? And that's where our values come in. What are we good at? All of that. I'm doing a workshop on Thursday that is an audit of some of those kind of things. Do I know what my values are? Do I know what my personality says? Like, you know, your strengths. And we've talked a little bit about you being an Enneagram 9, and those are perfect strengths for a 9. You do create harmony. You do connect other people, and playing into that makes so much more sense because you're right. It takes so much less energy to live in that kind of groove. And it's incredibly important. And it makes me curious. And also the other thing, that action, like there's an action. It's not just values on the wall. There's an action that goes with it. And you brought up a little bit about the school and, you know, like these are their values. And I'm curious what you see the connection is between a leader who is aligned, and then how do you help a team or an organization be aligned? What's the relationship there?
Yeah, that's a good question, because I think the role of the leader is really to help pull out and help your team be aware of what their values and their strengths are. So, and help them put a little bit more focus on their why and their how, because it's very easy, you know, leaders are often tasked with trying to make sure that we get from point A to point B, and we know how we got there. We know what might be most efficient, although it's not always the most efficient if we're trying to force somebody to do something that's outside of their strengths or against their values, because that'll all just cause some friction that'll slow them down, because their inner self is like, wait, you're asking me to do this in a way that's not comfortable for me. So if the leader can kind of recognize and give a little bit more space to say, okay, this is where we need to go, get that vision, and then help them figure out how can you best move yourself and those around you in that direction. What is it about you, your strengths, your values that will make it easier and more sustainable for you to get there? Because the last thing that I would think any leader wants is to get to that end goal and then look at your team and see them all deflated and exhausted and unready to take on the next challenge, right? And that's what can happen when we ignore the who they are, and you know, and we focus only on the doing piece.
One of my deep passions and kind of like missions in why I do this work is to move away from this mindset of that people are just widgets and we can just stick them in any place, but rather they're whole people with whole lives and whole experiences, and that they matter as much as the tasks they do matter. And I think about, oh my gosh, one of my roles when I was a school leader was creating all of the student accounts for every type of assessment program that they did, you know, if they were doing quick math or they had ready reader, whatever. And so which involved all kinds of spreadsheets. I would not say that I have an analytical mind. So
so you said spreadsheet and I light up. I'm like, ooh.
You got so excited. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. So it involves spreadsheets and like uploading CSV files. And, you know, if you didn't have the right thing at the top of the thing and the commas. And it just is like, I used to have to come to my house and sit on my couch and just like, because if I were at school, there were too many distractions. It took so much extra energy. And while that was always this like little 1-week project at the beginning of the school year, I always dreaded it. And it was just this part of my job that I hated. And looking back, and I'm like, I really wish we would have just outsourced that, because it would have gone so much smoother and faster. It would have taken somebody else so much less time.
That is
so
true.
I think that is why we think about who is the person in the role, not just the tasks that they do. And it changes so much of that. So kind of that brings me to a question about when you feel like you're the person. So you're on the team, and I'm always trying to help people self-lead. How do you advocate for that alignment for yourself? Like, you've done the work to know, here are my values, here are my strengths, and I'm seeing this lack of alignment on my team. What are some things you would suggest to somebody to do to help move toward alignment for themselves when they're not the quote unquote leader?
I would encourage one to get clear on what is causing some of that friction, like which specific value is not being met, or are you running up against a wall when you're trying to meet it, or which strength are you really you're wanting to use but you're not getting to use it. So start thinking about like where, and I call that the friction, like where are you kind of getting held back because you're not able to lean into and activate your values, or live into your strengths and show up kind of more naturally, kind of more flowing. Once you have that, comes the hard part of asking for what it takes to show up as you, because there's been some really great studies recently. I think the one that I always like to go to is Erin Hatzikostas. I think I pronounced her last name correctly. She's done a great study on authenticity in the workplace and how much value in terms of being able to connect with your coworkers, connect with your leaders, know or feel that you have a future in this role, in this company, by being able to show up authentically. And authenticity is not about the skills that you do, it's about your values and your personality and your strengths and being able to show up as you are. So that's a huge important element to kind of being able to engage in work and being able to do that. But that involves, if you're not the leader, first of all, getting clear on what it is that's missing that will help you kind of feel less like a widget and more like a human. Mm-hmm. And then being able to articulate that and talk about, what might need to change so that you can show up this way.
I think about that like Velcro. Like, if I don't know which side of the Velcro I'm on, it's really hard to connect. Yeah. And so I have to get clear myself. And then, well, what's not matching over here? Like, because I want to stick. Yeah. I don't want that, I want the connection. Right. And so it's such a great way. Like, you yourself as the person have to be clear on you. And then next is to identify where that friction is. And I love the word friction. That's such a great way to describe how it feels when we're out of alignment. Because sometimes we're like, oh, I don't know what that feels like. But friction, we all know it. Like, ooh, that wasn't quite it. Right. And then being willing to have the hard conversation to say, hey, this isn't working, and problem solving around that, being positive. Like, here's how I'd love to move forward. Is that possible? What can we do? And you have such a great experience in your experience of like somebody really working with you to help that happen. And I think the more we can help teams do that, it's more efficient and more authentic for everybody when we help that happen.
Absolutely.
So I want to keep talking to you forever, and I just looked at the time. And so
I tried not to watch the time, so we could keep going.
Well, I clearly didn't. Normally I'm a little bit better about that. I was just so into what you were saying. So tell everybody where they can find you, what you're doing, and what they can learn from you.
Yeah, so the best place to find me, and I love to have conversations and connect with people like I mentioned earlier, is on LinkedIn. Aree Bly, easy to find. I think I'm the only one out there. But also go to my website. Like you mentioned early on, I love to talk about this stuff. I love to do workshops and keynotes and get in the ideas out to share these and have those conversations with groups as well. So the best place is my website, which is areebly.com. And then I'm excited and terrified about this next piece, but I'm working on a book. So eventually there should be a book out there by me. Right now, the working title is The Sustainable Brain. It's an analytical mind's guide to sustainable career and life. So it's all about connecting kind of your brain to your heart so that you can figure out the best path forward.
Oh, so good. I cannot wait. You'll have to come back on and tell us more.
Absolutely.
So good. So good. Well, follow Aree. She is, as you can see, a delight of a human and always makes me just calm a little bit because I can get so excited. And is just a lovely person in general and so generous and kind. So thank you for your time today. I really, really appreciate it. Like I said, I'm doing a workshop on Thursday called the Catalyst Impact Leadership Audit. If you were interested, you can go to jenwimmer.com/catalyst impact or shoot me a DM. And we're going to do some of that pausing that Aree was talking about to kind of figure some things out. Check out Aree's website. And as a fellow speaker, we love getting referrals of speaking. So, and bring Aree in. Yes, I do speak for a living. So thank you again for your time. Next week, I will be back with another fantastic leader talking to you about some specifics around how you can be a better leader. So thanks so much for joining us, everybody, and we will see you later. Bye.